Hi, and welcome to 2-Minute Topics. Today's topic is on business process redesign and how organizations change their processes to stay competitive. Now, if you follow me on LinkedIn regularly, you know I'm always talking about processes and about understanding your processes. But today we're going to take that a step further and talk about what it actually takes to change them. So, let's get this Case Explained train rolling with your 2 minutes starting now. On a daily basis, organizations are running on processes. And over time, whether we know it or not, those processes tend to drift or evolve, most of the time in inefficient ways. So you'll see things like steps getting added, manual workarounds becoming permanent, and before long, your organization will be doing things a certain way simply because that's just how it's always been done. But the reality is that an organization is only as effective as its business processes. So when those processes go unchecked, the problems that follow start to chip away at productivity, cost, and customer value. So let's walk through how to think about changing a process. So number one, recognizing when a process needs to change. Now, before you can make a change to a process, you have to be able to identify when one is causing issues. So when processes are not consistently reviewed, they tend to accumulate non-value added work, which shows up in things like bottlenecks, manual steps, reworks, duplicated data, or lack of clarity about who is responsible for what. Obviously, this creates additional costs and time within your operations without adding anything meaningful or valuable. One of the biggest indicators that I often hear, you might hear this too, is when you ask someone why a process is being performed a certain way, and the response is, well, we've always done it that way. Number two, understanding the spectrum of process change. So once you've identified that a process needs to change, the next thing to understand is that change is not one size fits all. It actually exists on a spectrum ranging from radical to incremental. So on the radical end is business process reengineering, which is the fundamental redesign of a process to achieve a breakthrough improvement in cost, quality, speed, and service. On the incremental end is business process improvement, which is the gradual refinement of a process over time. So how do you know which one you need? Well, in simple terms, if a process is reasonably close to where it needs to be, improvement is likely the answer. But if a process is fundamentally broken, then a radical redesign may be necessary. And number three, grounding change in the as-is process. So no matter what end of that spectrum that you actually land on, every successful change starts in the same place, and that's understanding and documenting your current processes, or what's referred to as your as-is or baseline process. The reason that this is important is that you can't meaningfully improve or redesign a process that you don't fully understand, and you can't identify any gaps or problem areas to know how to improve without that baseline either. But this is also where your people come into play, both internally and externally. Documenting the baseline with their input will help capture the realistic everyday steps being performed. Now, your people are often the difference between a change that sticks and one that falls apart, because failing to account for them and their insight is one of the most common reasons that these efforts fail. Now, keep in mind that technology can absolutely be the vehicle that enables process change, but technology alone is not the answer. If you automate a broken process, all you'll end up with is a very expensive version of that same broken process. So the process understanding has to come first. So as you look across your own organization, remember that changing a process isn't about chasing the newest tool or the biggest overhaul, but it's about recognizing when something needs to change, understanding how much it needs to change, and then grounding that change in how your work is truly getting done today. Stay tuned for the next episode, where I'll continue breaking down these supply chain fundamentals with new concepts and practical insights.